Elliot stepped out of the car and squinted up at the colossal entrance to the circus. His mother's voice floated behind him, something about not wandering off, but her words slipped away as he gazed at the strange archway. It wasn't like any circus he'd seen before. There was no bright red and white tent, no cartoonish clowns or glittering banners. Instead, the sign arched high above him, carved out of weathered black iron. Its letters glowed with an otherworldly neon hue. Cirque Nocturne. In the distance, a surreal Ferris wheel rose against the sky, its obsidian spokes turning slowly, defying logic and gravity alike. Beyond the entrance, everything seemed dim, like a foggy twilight had settled over the grounds. People moved inside, but their shadows stretched far too long behind them. A clown loomed by the gate, holding a basket of tickets. His face paint was faded, his costume fraying at the seams. He didn't smile, just stared at Elliot with sunken, glassy eyes. His mother nudged him forward, her hand firm on his back.
Go on.
Her smile too wide, eyes not quite meeting his. He glanced at her face, and something in it made his stomach twist. Her eyes were glassy, too. The clown's hand was cold when it brushed against his, the ticket crumpling softly in his palm. The clown's eyes tracked him as he walked through the swaying drapes, and as Elliot glanced back, he saw the clown wasn't standing anymore. He was crouched, head tilted, eyes peering at him through the folds of fabric, like a predator watching prey. The air changed as soon as Elliot stepped inside. It wasn't just cooler, it was heavier, like it had weight. The ground beneath his feet felt strange too. Not dirt, not gravel, but something soft and pliant, like old, damp carpet. Sounds echoed unnaturally here. The distant, calliope music. Should have been playful, but every note hung in the air a little too long, like a breath caught on a thorn. He glanced around for his mother, but she was already walking ahead, her head tilted at an odd angle, as though listening for something only she could hear. He tried to follow, weaving through the crowd, but the people around him didn't move like normal people. Their heads twitched slightly with every step, their eyes flicking left and right in sudden jerking movements. The acrobats swung above them, but they moved too slowly, like a video played at half speed. A woman on stilts lumbered past, her painted face frozen in a grimace. Her eyes rolled to follow him, but her head never moved. Elliot's chest tightened, and he grabbed for his mother's hand, but she was already too far ahead. He called her name, but the word came out muffled, like he was underwater. The crowd thickened, and for a moment, he thought he saw a girl in the yellow dress. She was standing by the entrance to the Hall of Mirrors, her dress old and stained. Her hair hung in wet, knotted clumps. She didn't move. Her arms hung limp at her sides, and her eyes were locked on him, not in the distant, glassy way like the others, but focused, aware, a slow, deliberate blink. His heart thudded in his chest. He looked away, scanning for his mother, but when he glanced back, the girl in the yellow dress was gone. The Hall of Mirrors loomed ahead like an open maw. Its entrance didn't look like an entrance at all, just a wall of mirrors standing perfectly aligned, endless reflections folding into one another like a portal to nowhere. His mother was nowhere to be seen. Elliot knew he shouldn't go inside, but the crowd behind him was too close now, too suffocating. The air smelled like damp iron and wet leaves. Something touched the back of his neck, light, feathery, like a spider web. He spun around, but it was only the crowd, faces too still, eyes too wide. The girl in the yellow dress was standing in front of the Hall of Mirrors again. This time, She raised one hand and crooked her finger at him, beckoning him in. He mouthed, his throat too tight to speak. Her lips moved silently in response, but he knew what she was saying. Yes, you will. He took a step back, and the crowd pressed forward. Their arms brushed against him, their clothes damp like they'd been caught in the rain. The girl's lips moved again, slower this time.
You are in it now.
A sharp tug at his sleeve. He yelped, spinning toward it, but no one was there. He turned back, and the girl was gone. But her reflection was waiting for him in the nearest mirror. Her face was inches from the glass, her demonic red eyes blazing like twin infernos, her features frozen in a twisted mockery of a grin, too knowing, too cruel. Her fingers pressed against the surface, and suddenly, with a jarring snap, they clawed at the air with an invisible force. Elliot felt it instantly, a violent yank on his chest, as if a hook had lodged in his ribcage, pulling him toward the glass. His feet skidded against the ground, his body lurching forward as unseen hands dragged him closer. He stumbled back, heart pounding, and suddenly he was inside the Hall of Mirrors. The entrance was gone, and only his reflection surrounded him. But it wasn't just his reflection. Some of them smiled. Not all of them. Just a few. Just enough to notice. He froze, hard in his throat. The one directly in front of him tilted its head, but Elliot didn't move. Slowly, the reflection's head turned to the side. It pressed a finger to its lips. But the sound didn't come from the mirror. It came from right behind him. Elliot spun, hands out, ready to shove whatever was behind him, but there was nothing there, only reflections. His breath fogged up the glass in front of him, but none of the other reflections breathed. They stared, still, patient. He ran. The reflections blurred as he sprinted, but his eyes caught flashes. His own face, but twisted. His mouth pulled open, too wide, his eyes gone, just hollow sockets staring into him. He ran faster, his heartbeat. A frantic drumbeat in his ears. Somewhere behind him a giggle echoed, high, sharp, like a child's laugh, but wrong, like it was being played in reverse. He didn't dare look back. He could hear something moving behind him now, soft. Footsteps, keeping pace with his own. No, not footsteps. 4 limbs. It was crawling. He ran harder, lungs burning. The mirrors ahead of him shimmered like heat rising off asphalt, and his reflection was there. Every one of them grinning now, teeth sharp, eyes too black.
Stay.
They whispered, their voices layered into one.
Stay. Stay. Stay.
His own voice echoed back at him.
Stay! Stay!
He slammed into a mirror. Hands pressed against it, gasping for air. The surface was warm. It throbbed beneath his palms like touching skin. His own reflection stared at him from the other side, but its smile stretched too far now, up its cheeks, eyes bleeding into the whites. It pressed its hands against his, and for a moment, Elliot felt its fingers move under his. He gasped, yanking his hands back, and the mirror bulged toward him like a bubble of water about to pop. Behind him, something scuttled closer. He didn't want to turn. He didn't want to see it. But he had to. Slowly, heart thudding in his ears, he turned his head. The girl in the yellow dress crouched on all fours. Her head tilted slowly to one side, eyes locked on him like a cat watching a bird. Her mouth moved slowly, silently, shaping the words he knew before she even said them.
Got you.
She lunged. The mirrors shattered around him. A million shards of glass catching the light. The last thing he saw was his demonic reflection, its grin splitting its face like a cracked mask, hollow eyes staring hungrily through him, arms open wide as if to drag him into its endless void. He realized with a cold, sinking certainty that there was no escape. This was the end.